I said earlier, I don't want to be doing this completely on my own. The Pivotal guys are here, so I wanted to make use of that and broaden my promise a bit on not just building some software and running it, but we also wanted to deploy it to a proper production environment. Well, it's proper. It's still the demo environment of Pivotal, I believe, but the ones that the architects and sales guys use to show their platform. So please also welcome Ben Wilcock. He will be doing. He'll be doing the opsy stuff. I wasn't allowed to call him an ops guy, so. And I did it again.
I've not been called hardcore for quite a while, so thank you for that.
So we were figuring what should we build? We want to build something with a proper domain, well, Ben is from out of town.
I am. It's my first time in Amsterdam, so I was wandering around town yesterday, Allard, and I thought, well, do you know what? If there's one thing this town needs, it's some more bicycles.
More bicycles. So what we're going to do is build a bike rental application, and we'll be needing a few dependencies for that. And of course, I've been preparing everything and making notes, but not for this one. So hang in there. I'm pretty sure we're going to forget a few. I believe we only needed the web module H2 as a database and Spring Data JPA to get started. Right.
Let's try that. Yeah.
Right. So that's downloaded. Internet works here, so that's great. We just unzip that. What did I call it? Bike rental. Is the font good enough? Yeah. So screen's big.
It's lovely.
So I can do start. No. Idea pom.xml. So. Who's not familiar with start.spring.io? Well, you are now. If you are in a greenfield project, that is the greenfield, right? That is where you start and you just say, oh, this is what I want, and you press run and you've got it. There might be a few details missing, like functionality, but at least the application is operational at that point. There's even a test, and it just tests if the application starts up. We have full faith, so I'm going to remove that. Who needs tests these days? So I am going to cheat a bit. I've got some classes already. I copied them from a snatch pad, and these are the commands and events, right? I don't want to go through the tedious work of creating a Pojo and say, well, these are the fields and these are the getters. But essentially, we've got a few commands, and that is to provision a bike at a specific location, then to rent a bike, where you provide the bike ID and the person actually renting it, and lastly, to return a bike, and then again specify a specific location. So in theory, we should always know either where a bike is or who's got it at any point in time. Now, there are some dependencies missing. Unfortunately, please take notes, Pivotal, that the Axon thing is still missing on start.spring.io.
Sorry about that.
But I'm sure now that I've said it, it will take care of it pretty quickly. Axon, Spring.
Oh, with your download numbers, that's highly likely.
So we're going to take Axon 306 for this. And as you can see, I just included a Spring Boot starter module, and this gives me all the dependencies, but also the auto configuration that I need to get this working. So now I have some dependencies that I need to import. That's it. So I can start creating some classes, and of course I want in Axon I want you to focus on the business logic. So I'm just going to create a class, static one, which is my aggregate. So that is the actual bike that we can rent out. Right? And a bike needs to have an identifier, or Axon needs an aggregate to have an identifier. and you specify it like that. So now I can provide some command handlers, and the first one is to provision a bike, right? That was the first command that we defined, provision bike command. Now, who's not familiar, who has never implemented an event-sourced aggregate before? About half, okay. So very important to separate the logic of handling a command into two parts. The first part makes the decisions, right? Is this a valid command at this point in time? Well, in this specific case, if you can invoke the constructor, we assume that it's a new object, so there's not much to validate in terms of state of the bike. But the second part is where you simply apply an event, and in this case is bike provisioned event. Oops, not like that, sorry. And we have the ID, that is, and the get location. Command apply. That's it. So in the command handler itself, we're just applying an event, nothing else. We're not changing any state, and the only state change we need here for now is that identifier, right? That's the only mandatory state that you have. Well, given it's an entity, it would be weird not to have an identifier anyway. So we have an event sourcing handler that it can have any visibility, doesn't matter. I like them to be protected. And then you say on a bike provisioned event, I'm going to set the identifier to event.getID. And the reason we want to do that is when we reconstruct the aggregate state based off of prior events, because that's the only thing we've got, right? We only have the history of this object. So if we want to reconstruct the current state of this object, we need to reapply all these events. And you do not want to make decisions based on things that happened so long ago that they happened. You can't reject them anymore. So the decision making goes into the command handler. The state changes go into the event sourcing handler. You're very likely to make some mistakes, especially in the beginning. The Axon test fixtures will actually warn you. They will verify that you don't have these what we call illegal state changes. And it's quite harsh, but they truly are illegal state changes. You should not do them. It will signal them and give you a warning.
Shouldn't there also be location set in this?
So the question is, should there also be location set? For now, no, we don't care about location. So remember that the class here, the entity and the aspects that we choose, this is about command handling. There's a command coming in, we need to validate that state. For now, we don't need location anywhere. We could add it as a field, but then IntelliJ would warn me and say, well, you're writing to the field, but you're not reading from it. And that means in this model, we actually don't need that data. It's part of the model because it comes out of the events, but this class doesn't need to know the current location for now. So the other one is to rent a bike. The method name in Axon doesn't matter as long as it's annotated, and then it's rent out bike command, and a bit of code style, I guess. And then we apply new bike rented out event, which has the ID and the renter, nothing else. But in here, it's a bit weird to rent out a bike that's already rented out, right? So we want to keep track of whether it is rented out or not. So let's do the ugly thing, assert.state. Whoever uses assert, right? So let me use it now, just so whoever built it doesn't feel that bad. And we say we assert that the state is not rented. Oops, rented, right? And if it is rented, then we say bike already rented out. Now, this is basically an if statement, right? So we have conditional logic in here. And we need some information. We need to know whether it was rented out. So now we start adding fields, which is a Boolean in this case. And of course, we need to maintain that field. So what are the events that mean it was rented out? Well, it happens to be the one that we're implementing right now. Rented out events. So if the bike is rented out, then actually this dot rented is true. It doesn't really matter what the details are. We don't care who rented it, it's just gone. Right? That's the only validation that we really care about at this point. And then there's the last one. And then it's a return bike command. And again, we want to make sure that the bike was actually rented. You don't want to return a bike unless it's rented, right? Probably you want to do something else because somebody's returning it for a reason. But yeah, we only have 45 minutes. Usually projects take slightly longer than that, so I'll take the easy route. Where did you get that bike? We didn't give it to you. And again, we need the rented state, but we've already populated that, so that's fine. We're safe there. And if everything is to our liking in terms of state, then we decide to apply a new bike returned event.
What's the significance of apply then, Allard?
Yeah, so apply means, it does two things for us. So first of all, apply means literally apply this change to my state. So whatever state changes that this event will cause on the aggregate will be applied right away. So in the line of code after apply, you will have the new state. Right? So you can do further ifs. The second thing it does is it will prepare that event for publication. So as soon as our unit of work, i.e. transaction, is being committed, those events are also published.
Shouldn't the negation in the one assertion not switch places to the other assertion?
Sorry, should?
Should the negation of the first assertion not go to the second instead?
If it is not rented, no, it asserts that it is not rented. So if it is not rented, it's okay. And the second one says, if it is rented,
okay.
I want to make sure it's rented. Otherwise, I throw an exception.
What if you try to rent out a bike which doesn't exist?
So what happens if you rent out a bike that doesn't exist? In that case, we will load an aggregate, or Axon will try to load an aggregate that doesn't exist, and we'll tell you, can't find it. We'll probably hit that problem somewhere later on by accident. So, it would be nice if we could run this. Unfortunately, probably fortunately, Axon doesn't come with its own API automatically. We are not Ruby on Rails or anything that will generate everything for you. And we have our reasons to believe that's for the better. So we need to make a little REST controller here. And again, I'm going to create a public class. This is really bad coding practice, but this is what I've learned from Joyce Long. It's apparently really cool to create everything in a single class. Right?
When demoing.
When demoing, except that he also types and speaks at triple speed, which is not something I can do. Anyway, so we're going to create an API, and the API layer will need to send commands, and the way to do that in Axon is through a command gateway. I noticed I forgot one thing in my command, my aggregate here. Axon needs, like some other frameworks, a default constructor. So we need a controller. So Spring, the old version of Spring 4, allows you to just specify them in if there's a single constructor, then all the parameters of that constructor are auto-wired, so you don't have to specify at auto-wired. Now I'm going to do some operations that are definitely not get operations, but I'm going to put them on a get mapping because I'm extremely lazy. I don't want to get all JSON up. I just want to have a URL that I can copy paste, click, and press F5 to resend it. So that's why I'm going to do some get mappings. And I'm going to do /provision. So we want to provision a bike at a specific location. public. And we are going to use completable futures. And then the method doesn't really matter, provision. And we're going to have that as a path variable and say string location. Now in my command gateway, I'm going to send a command. And as you can see, the return value, the return type is again a completable future. So I said in my morning keynote that one of the most important things is abstraction. So I don't want to give away anything about where this command is being executed. So it may or may not be on the same machine. It is right now, but that's why we're returning a completable future, just saying, well, you're going to get the answer at some point in time. Here's a handle and good luck. Right? So a new provision bike command. And it needs an identifier here, because that's how I designed it. Oops, location, that is the variable. And I'm going to just return that value back. Then I've got another get mapping on /rent /bike ID /renter. That is to allow us to rent out a bike, completable future. I don't know the type just yet. Rent. And then add path variable. This is of course always very tedious stuff, but ID and path variable string renter. Thank you. You've passed the test. Command gateway dot send new rent out bike command with the bike ID and the renter. There you go. And then we have the last one, which is the get mapping public completable future. Any type, we don't really care. Spring will figure out what's actually in it and render the proper stuff later. So why do something if you have a framework that does that? So now we want to return the bike, and that is on /return /bike, and let's call that bike ID, and then location where we return it. Return bike command. Oh, sorry, I was skipping a step, I guess. Path variable string bike ID at path variable string location.
So there's no way to monetize any of this. So I guess we're still in startup stealth mode.
We're still in stealth mode, startup. Yeah,
Right.
we won't. There's no payments yet. We'll do that next iteration, I guess.
Take your bike. On your bike.
Startups don't care about making money, do they? So
That's it. That's it.
it's all about investor happiness.
We've got a runway. Let's use it.
So we return bike, and then we have our bike ID and our location. There we go. So we should now be able to run this, and well, let's see what happens. Of course, I'm running this locally now, and we've got the H2 database included. So there's JPA, the H2, and that will trigger Axon to create an JPA event store. Automatically, it will set up all the event bus wire, the aggregate that we've defined, and everything is there. So there's no Axon-specific configuration so far. So we have, as you can see, I have done a few of these tests before. We can provision a bike in Amsterdam, and we have, woohoo, a UUID. Fantastic. I think we're probably the only people in the world that could be happy because of a UUID appearing on the screen. But I'm pretty sure we can impress all our investors of this bike rental startup with this.
Oh, yeah.
So actually, it's returning because the command is sent to a constructor. It will not return the object because the return value of a constructor is the object that was created. It will not do that because of encapsulation. it will just return the identifier by default. But if you want to return anything else, everything is configurable, so you can configure it to return some other value if you want to. So basically, this is our ID, and now we can go to localhost 8080.rent and rent that bike, and I've got it. And it doesn't say why that failed. Well, it does. Null pointer, that's just lovely. So you guys missed something. Is assignable from method, that's interesting. So this is always the stuff you get for free, right? That the HTTP servlet is throwing a null pointer exception somewhere. Makes you wonder, did I? I told you things are going wrong. It's not even getting to my code.
I have a question, maybe that who calls the controller with the command gateway? Who creates the controller?
Who creates a controller? Spring does. So Spring will create, because I've annotated it with @rest_controller, Spring Boot will automatically detect that, create an instance of it. So at least it's recognizing a pattern or a location. Let me check which Spring Boot version we have, 157. It worked the other day, so that should not be the problem. I just love this.
It's definitely live.
Just in case you weren't aware, this was not planned for, right? This is. It probably means that I have some wrong.
That you were getting autocomplete on the UUID from a previous test run. You were using the wrong UUID. Is the URL correct? It starts with
The aggregate was not found in the event store. That makes sense because I restarted. But let's get a new one. Here we go. So at least you can see it's trying to load it, and of course H2 is in the memory database. So after restart, it was all gone. Let me get to an existing. I'm probably doing something stupid. That aggregate identifier, right? I rented.
this prefix is correct.
Sorry, is?
The prefix correct.
Prefix.
URL.
URL prefix should be on /. So let me check. I've got.
You call it ID at the top.
The name shouldn't matter, but let's go for it. But I doubt it. Bike rented out. Did I miss? Turn by command. Okay. This is lovely. Here we go again.
Still, I'm glad that this is happening pre-production.
Yeah, that's a good part of it.
In a
yeah.
safe environment.
You don't want to be figuring this out in production.
Yeah, you don't want to be figuring this out.
So we've got a breakpoint here. We expected that. We've got a breakpoint there. That's good. But this part worked. And it's throwing an exception on this call. And nothing's happening. There it is. So it's reloading my my events. That's fine. So it's got a bike ID. So this .bike ID is null because it's now reconstructing my my aggregate, and there's an ID in here, so it should go F8 now, and then it sets the ID as we expect. There's nothing really special to that, and this is where things go boom. Bike rented out event. Do I hate this?
So did you have one that you'd prepared earlier?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
The problem with that is I've got, so I don't know what's going on. I've got our previous run, and we ran this before, obviously, and there's a solution. But the problem with that is it's got everything.
Ah, yes, yeah.
All the code, so there's no live coding in that case.
The building reveal. It's basically a GitHub.
So every time you start a project, my personal recommendation is keep a copy of whatever you wanted to build ready to deploy instead. No, serious. No. Okay, that's so worst case we can
So
copy
when you do
paste
find out later.
some stuff. Well, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy the aggregate and see if we can open that in. Anyway, so we have our REST controller. It suddenly appears all the way up, and in this code base we added some logging as well, which is some proof for later on. We have our aggregate here, which is the bike. As you can see, there's a variable or a field rental, and what I'm going to do is I'm copying this to my new project.
Possibly one other handy feature of having everything in one class.
Yeah, that's why we want everything in one class anyway.
Yeah. Backup restore. Boom.
We didn't build this yet, so let's take that out. There we go. There's still some mistakes. Yep, we don't have those yet. Okay. Let's see what happens now.
I'm crossing your fingers.
Spot
This
the
always
7
helps.
differences. this
My mum told me this would help.
Now it's worse, it doesn't even start anymore. Yeah.
Application properties, so they're different. Oh, a port is still running. Is that right? Yeah.
Why did I do that? There we go. I have to figure out which one it is. Probably something Java that doesn't take too much memory. Let's give it a go. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. There we go. Yeah, I could change the port as well, but that's too easy. That would be a sensible choice, right? Just killing a random Java process is so much more fun.
There we go.
Here we go.
Okay.
Let's provision a bloody bike. I go to work by car. Okay. Oh wow.
If you just edit out the last 10 minutes of your life,
So
that was amazing.
So-
Can we cut some of that?
yeah, so there's a bit of change here in the completable future. What I'm doing now is send a command, then apply a function to the returned value, which is null by default because they're all void methods, and I'm changing that to OK, and I'm going to transform any exception to the message. And in that case, I get a string back. I'm going to return that. So if anything is wrong, you'll see the name and the message of an exception instead of getting the entire stack trace. Because later on in the demo, I anticipate some F5ing, load testing, and to see if Pivotal Cloud Foundry can
Is that what
keep
they
up.
call that?
Yeah, F5 is
F5,
for
yeah.
load testing. Yeah.
Got a question over here.
Yeah.
The command gateway.send, what exactly it is doing now? Is it persisting it to the event store, or is it also going to a queue?
So the command gateway.send will send a command on the command bus, whichever command bus you might have installed. By default, it's a simple command bus, and it will essentially look at in the command. There's one field annotated with this is the identifier, or this is the field I want to use as an identifier on the aggregate. Axon will load that aggregate for you and send the command to that specific instance.
The bus you're talking about is like ActionIQ, RabbitMQ, whatever you like.
So the bus I'm talking about is literally command bus, and that could be any implementation, any. So you can have any messaging system underneath. Right now, it's just a hash map, just saying this command should go there, that command should go there. So
Is it a synchronous thing? Because it's
right now, it's synchronous. Yeah. So I've copy pasted a new component in here, which is the last component we need. Of course, we want to see some state on the current status of bikes, right? We've implemented the command side of things. We need some query side. So for that, we need a repository, which is extremely difficult to build in Spring Data JPA. It's extend the APA repository.
So this is basically our bike inventory, is it?
Yes. So we're going to have a query model object called bike status, which is identified by a string. And that bike status is an object. Let me move it all the way down. Public static class bike status. And it will have a few properties. Private string. It will have the bike ID. Private string, Boolean rented. So whether or not it's rented out. And we have a private string location. And we have a private string renter. We're going to create some getters for those. No, our constructor is already there. So this allows us to basically keep track of state of all the bikes that we have. So there's some convenience stuff going on here. Oops. Bind constructor, parameters to fields. Now I do need a default constructor. Oops. Save, why is it not saving? Love this. Why is this not? It's not my day-to-day, is it? Save new bike status.
Did you get the repository annotation in there?
So I believe it. Do we need to? No, I don't think we need that, do we?
I can't remember.
I didn't import. That's it. Fantastic. And then there's a few methods missing. So these are just convenience methods. So I mark this status object as rented. That means that this dot rented is true. And this dot renter equals whoever rented it. And there's another method, mark returned, which basically means this dot rented is false. Renter equals null, and this dot location equals the location that we're providing. So this is basically our query model. So I've added a few methods on how are we using this model, what's a nice API that helps us. But most of the attention we spend here is, besides getting it running, is on the fields. Now here we go again, and see if this works. So we have a few extra, or one extra URL, if I can find it. Do we? Where is it? There, /status. Oh, if it starts. So bike status is a proper JPA entity, and we need to pass in an ID for it.
When the bike is rented out, would you like to keep the old location, or would you like to say location is not known?
So the question is, do you want to keep the location if the bike is rented out? Just because I implemented it this way, I'm going to say, yes, of course, we want to keep the... I thought, we might as well keep the location. Where was it rented from originally? But yeah, you could say, well, it's not there anymore, so we remove it. Of course, that depends on the type of queries that you... or the usage you expect from your end clients. If they use this status call, so let me rent out one of these bikes and provision another one in Rotterdam. And now we're going to go to localhost 8080/status, and we should see two bikes. And one of them is rented out to me, and the other one is in Rotterdam waiting for somebody to actually use it.
Plus, that's also our stock take. So if we've got different stores, we can do a stock take. We know who's got what. Maybe I'm making this up. I'm a startup.
So we're almost ready to get this in production. I mean, it's fully functional, right? We can go in business with this.
Let's get it in the
So
hands of
let's do
users.
that.
Yeah.
The only thing is, in production, we don't want to be using H2. And Spring Boot has a really nice feature. It will automatically generate all the tables for you if you use an in-memory database. So as soon as we move this to production, to our production-grade MySQL, then Spring Boot will recognize, oh, that's MySQL. I'm not going to auto-create any tables there because I'm going to mess up maybe something. And we do want that, so we have to explicitly say generate DDL is true. And at this point, I'm going to do very DevOps-like stuff and say, okay,
You don't
good
have
luck.
to do that.
Get it.
You don't have to do that.
Get my stuff in production. Here it is.
I do feel like this keyboard is slightly jinxed, but I'll give it a go. So what I think we should do to prepare this for production, because we're going to be, well, pushing, 100 times a day? Because we can iterate on our code that fast, right? So, so to save us a little bit of time, I'm going to create a manifest for the application, which is a YAML file, which I'm putting in the wrong spot. So ignore that. Let's put it in here.
Just move it.
New file, manifest.yaml. There we go. Boom. And this is pretty simple. All I need is applications to list them out. I need to give it a name, which we'll call bike rental, yeah. And I'm going to tell it where the path is, where it will exist. Have you built this yet, Allard?
No, I haven't. But let me... Of course I've built it. That's why I removed the tests. Sorry, it's the wrong directory.
Oh. Oh. Hello.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question. I'm trying to fix the directory being wrong.
Well, my
That was the
glamorous
question.
assistant does that. No, there's no... So at Pivotal, we have this saying. We say, here is my code, run it in the cloud for me, I don't care how. And that's what we're about to show you. So by creating a manifest and putting into the manifest the jar file that's related to this particular application, once I've saved that off, then we can go to our
We want to be
command line.
using MySQL on this one, right?
Yes, we do. We do want to use MySQL. Thank you for the reminder. So to try and speed that up as well, services, I'll add MySQL as a service. Save that off. And then I'm going to switch to my command line somehow. Is that one? And then, first of all, I'm going to create a MySQL instance for this particular application. So if I go and have a look at Cloud Foundry, if I do services, CF is the command line tool that we use to do that. There we go. And it'll tell me what's already in that space. So it's telling me I've already got Spring Cloud Registry, which is kind of useful, isn't it? But we'll add in some MySQL. So CF create service. I want a type of PMySQL. There's a whole marketplace of these which you can have a look at. I want the plan, which is a 100 megabyte plan, and I want to call it MySQL. Okay. So Cloud Foundry is now going to go away and create for me in my space production-ready MySQL database that I can use to save all the data from your application in your event store and in your query sides and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's done. So if I do CF services once more, it will show me that in the list. Yep, there's my MySQL. So this is the folder. We're ready to go, yeah? So if I do CF push, it's now going to take that code, look at the jar, decide that it's a Java archive. It's then going to do a whole bunch of stuff. So did we have anybody who's used things like Kubernetes or Docker and that sort of stuff before? got 1, 2, 3, yeah, so a few. So the equivalent in Cloud Foundry land, what it's currently doing is it's, like I said, it's had a look at the jar. It's building as a container, so that's got a hardened operating system on it. It's also got Java runtime. It's putting our application into that container. It's then scheduling that container ready to start, which in Kubernetes land is kind of the equivalent to defining a Docker file, doing a pod, creating a service, and then exposing that service to the outside world. And then the very last bit that it will do is wire all that up so that it can join our DNS strategy, and we'll be able to see that over the internet. So it will be in production in, well,
seconds, I guess.
a few seconds, hopefully, yeah. So then we can show that by going to a URL and doing exactly the same stuff that we've just done as a bit of a test. Do you feel up to that test? You ready?
Okay, let's give it a go. The URL.
Okay, so there's
is
your
right
there's your
there.
URL. So Allard's
We
highlighted.
have our domain name, which is really important, of course. So here we go, /status.
Okay.
I've never been so happy with 2 brackets on my screen. It means we're in production.
So anyone out there with a laptop or phone, you could hit that same URL as well. You'd see the same answer.
That's really dangerous. Thanks.
It is really dangerous, isn't it? Go on. Let's see how good we are.
So here's my bike, and then I'm going to rent that bike for Steven, who happens to live in Utrecht, and we're still in production. So the thing that happened here, which is quite magical, well, it wasn't magical, and then you just find out how it works, and then all the magic disappears. But is even though our application has a dependency on H2, the Pivotal Cloud Foundry push takes that H2 out and replaces it by MySQL, because we've bound our application to MySQL. So it understands that I'm definitely not interested in H2 anymore. Right? Which also means that if we stop and start this application, we still have our data, which is a nice feature to have in production, right? Of course, we are going slow on time, but there's one, there's one thing that I want to give a go at. Let's see if we can get that up and running really quickly. So I'm going to add a Spring Boot starter Spring Cloud, which will give us the wrong version first, but which will give us the distributed command bus. Why is it not?
So the distributed command bus needs what? Spring Cloud Registry to know where the other nodes are? Right, okay.
And to get that working, we have to put a few things in. Oops, test resources.
So Spring Cloud Registry, for anyone who's not seen it before, is based on Eureka, basically. So if you've heard of Netflix Eureka, you're probably already familiar with it. And by adding in this particular dependency, it means that our application will then be able to talk to that Eureka server and register each instance, each node, if you like, as they start up, so that all the nodes know about each other and can start to communicate with each other.
So there's a few versions that we need to manage, and what I need is the dependency on the Spring Cloud Services Starter Service Registry. Spring Cloud Starter. So for a while, Spring Cloud Services
Starter Service.
Wait a minute.
So
Spring Cloud
starter net.
Service. It's not auto-completing anymore. That's not a good sign. Spring
Cloud Services.
It says Services Starter. Starter Services. No. Love this. Did I say we were jinxed?
Yeah, we definitely, well, I'll say we.
Pivotal.spring.cloud. Okay, let me type it all the way. Spring Cloud Services Starter Service Registry. And it found it. Thank you, autocomplete IntelliJ.
I'm going to blame IntelliJ for that.
And we need to bind, do we need to bind anything?
Yes. So we can edit our manifest, can't we? We can just add it there, yeah. So it's called the registry, so yeah, that should do it. Looks good.
And there's a few properties, again, that we need to add. So Cloud Foundry comes with a nice feature called the router. And it makes sure that HTTP requests are automatically load balanced between nodes. We want to go around that because Axon is a bit of a, well, let's say we have our own ways of doing stuff. So we want to make sure that Pivotal does it the way we like, and we like to just have IP addresses and direct connections between the nodes. So this is a piece of configuration that will basically put you out of, well, not completely out of business, but at least get out of this part of
Oh, and do you want to have some more instances? I think you've only got one at the moment.
let's,
Do you want to add some more? You could do it through the manifest. You can just say instances.
let's push this application up, make sure it works,
Okay.
and then, yeah, Maven, something Maven.
Oh, man.
You added a registry, but no gateway for local?
Y- Like a Zool, yeah. So at the moment, I think Zool is getting added to what we do. So watch this space on that one. But we also already work with a couple of other gateway providers. So Apogee, for example, which most people have heard of. We have a very strong integration with Apogee already. So in an enterprise environment, you've probably got access to that already. And we can use what we call a service broker. So you saw service.
Add enable discovery client. Sorry, that was a.
Yeah. So you saw service brokers early when I typed CF create service. That was using a service broker to instantiate a service. With Apogee, what that can do is add things into the root so that you can do things like rate limiting and whatever it else is that you want to do with those particular routes, really. So there's lots of information online about that. How's it going? Is it going?
I think it's deploying a production-worthy, scalable version of our beautiful application.
Okay.
Did that sound convincing?
It did.
Okay.
I'm sold. I don't think the investors have got anything to worry about.
So it's doing its magic again, getting H2 out, all the other stuff that whatever Cloud Foundry needs to get this jar properly running. It's finding some stuff in cache now, so that should be a bit faster. And here we go. This is always...
So considering what this is doing, it feels a little bit, like you just got to wait for a minute. But it is building like whole containers from scratch. And that really helps with your security posture as well as you go forwards, because you're always getting the latest base image. You're always getting the latest hardened security patches and that sort of thing as well. So, whereas things like a Docker file, for example, can go out of date over time. If you just, regularly have a bit of a tick-tock on your applications on Cloud Foundry, then there's very little chance of that happening.
So here we go. We have our status. We have all these bikes that we have been basically creating. So are some people having fun on the URL, I guess. I see some familiar names. Anyway, so apparently we've got some bikes somewhere, and
Rude name.
of course, if we want to rent out that bike, we get an exception saying, "Hey, it's rented out to somebody else." But at least we can now F5 this and do a proper load test on it, right? But now we're just testing one machine. And I'd like to show the logging for this. Can you?
Yeah, sure.
Up?
Yeah. So you may remember this morning that the guys at Societe Generale were saying about how difficult it is to productionize applications and know what's going on with them. So one of the things that we have in Cloud Foundry is a thing that will let you aggregate the logs across multiple instances. So have you got 3 running now? or just one?
There's one instance.
Just
Yeah,
one at
maybe
the
we
moment.
want to
Okay.
scale it up first.
So let's have a look at CF logs. Do you just want the most recent ones?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay. Oh, hang on. What did I do wrong? Oh, I
Application.
forgot the application name. So bike rental. There we go. Did you put some logging in?
Yes, I
Oh,
did.
that's fine then. Yeah, loads of logging.
There should be something, something here. We see some logging of sending out a rent-out bike, received a rent-out bike, and everything is app 0 right now. So if we do a, what was it again?
Yeah, CF scale, put the bike rental, and then tell it to give you instances of 3. So this is going to take that single container and now orchestrate it onto a couple of different cells, so that, and then load balance across the top of them basically. So you'll end up with a 3-node application rather than a single node application.
Now the challenge here is that it will take a while for these nodes to discover each other, and I guess that's a sign of time.
These people
Well, we
coming
don't.
in, yep.
So let's do a quick CF log.
CF logs, yeah, and then application name, and then do you want the recent or are you tailing? Tailing.
I'm
okay.
going to just tail,
Yep.
and then do F5, and we see some logging. Can we? It went to 2 and it's handled on 2, and now what we expect is the initial HTTP request to go to any node, 0, 1, or 2, but the command's always going to the same one. So I've done a few more, and it's
Is
going.
that like some
from-
kind of shard or something, is it?
We're jinxing the system again.
Oh.
Doesn't matter. Apparently they're detecting each other now. So
It does
it's
take a
info.
little bit of time for that.
It's
to
going from
propagate.
0 to 1 now. So apparently they've discovered the nodes, and now they decided, oh, number 1 is going to handle them instead of number 2, which is the whole point of load balancing. And now we see that it's again 0 to 1. So you can see that these messages are, the sending is done by node 0, and the receiving is done by node 1 in that line. So we have some distribution going along. Well, looking at the number of people in the back, I guess our time's up. If you have any questions, we'll take them as we go. But thanks for looking at our debugging session.